Hello everyone, welcome back to Pixel Village and I'm Radha Krishnan. So it's believed, according to Google, Google cannot go wrong, so 500 hours of content get uploaded into YouTube every minute. Now imagine how much is that in 1 hour, 1 day, 1 month and in a year. It's awful lot of content that gets uploaded onto YouTube. Now, while that is a great news for a viewer, it's not so great news for the content creator because he has to fight so much harder for attention every time. During the early days of YouTube, the content creator used to just sit on one side of the table. It used to be called as the talking head. He would just speak into the camera, and that's all he used to do in those days. Then he was forced to get out of his room, wander about, show things around him, take the viewer for a ride, an adventurous ride sometimes, an educational trip for some time, and things like that. And that created a new market for very clever, interesting devices which would enable a content creator, not exactly a cinematographer, photographer, to create interesting content and also move the camera. The first thing was a stabilizer, a manual one, very unlike what we have now. It was a manual one. Setting up took a lot of time, and working with it literally and figuratively was pain on your backside. Then came the sliders, a promising, very silky smooth slide. It kind of replaced those, tracks which were difficult to set up and use. Sliders definitely was clever, but it still had a lot of problem because good quality sliders were awfully expensive, and you also needed special motors, sometimes even a silent motor, which again costed much more money to enable it to move smoothly and uniformly back and forth the track. Well, the other limitations of the slider was that it is a little cumbersome to carry around and set up and start shooting. And in came the 3-axis gimbal, which actually did a lot of great things to, digital content creators. But it could not really replace, and in one of our videos we actually have demonstrated that it could not really replace the slider because the slider had its own charm, and it had a certain visual language that it would communicate to you in a subconscious level. So they had to move the camera, they had the slider, they have a gimbal, but everything had its own pluses and minuses. And well, market kept on getting crowded with these kind of gadgets, promising the digital content maker a better, easier, smoother operation. To such a crowded market comes in this interesting new product, promising to make the life of a digital content creator and a digital filmmaker, their life easier. Well, like a heaven-sent product. Yeah, this is the one. But yaar, pura nahi hai. Pura de do, baba. Oh yeah. All new Moza SlyPod. What is it? Let's take a look at it. That's right. Moza promotes this as a two-in-one device. The first one, of course, is the slider, and the second one is that they say that it can be also used as a monopod. Now, what I am using currently is the pan tilt head. Okay, when you use the pan tilt head, of course, this works very comfortably as a slider. And if you want to use this as a monopod, of course, Moza has provided you with an adapter accessory on which you can mount a ball head. Well, your slider suddenly gets converted into a monopod. So that's why it's called a two-in-one. Now, the SlyPod can carry about around 4 kilos if you are moving your camera horizontally. And if you can also move the camera vertically. Now, that movement is not very easy if you have to do that same movement with a slider, a conventional slider. It is possible, I have done it, but it's a little cumbersome to do. But here it's very easy. So if you are moving the camera vertically, then of course you can have a payload of almost 9 plus kilos, which means you can actually mount serious cameras on to the SlyPod. And you can also couple the SlyPod with a gimbal, a 3-axis gimbal. So what are we going to do today is that we're going to demonstrate to you all possible movements using which the SlyPod can be put to a good use. We're going to demonstrate a track. We're going to demonstrate to you a dolly shot. Well, of course, then this with the gimbal and a good quality tripod, this can even get transformed as a jib arm. Now, imagine carrying a jib arm into a room where you need to create that kind of a movement, right? It's actually impossible, and also a digital content creator will never even think of, hiring a jib and, getting that thing done in a kind of a, well, even if you have the devices to yourself, you still may not consider that because the production becomes a little cumbersome. The content creators would love to get in and get out as quickly as possible. And I think a SlyPod makes that possible. So let's look at all those possible movements and a little more. Come back here and then let's conclude. Okay, now imagine you have a small room. You need to shoot in a confined space, but you still want to do a kind of a small jib arm movement. Well, obviously, the only option is to get a jib into that room, which is, cannot be possible, and for reasons that I explained in the beginning. Here I have a professional video tripod, a professional video fluid head, and I have mounted the SlyPod on it along with the Moza Air Cross 2. And I'm controlling the pitch angle using the remote app on a mobile phone. So this is my camera angle, and what I'm trying to do is have some warm water with me. I'm going to pretend that I'm going to relax in the evening, have a vodka or something like that, and I'm expecting a call, but in the meantime I'm reading some stuff, probably some message. Okay, ready, standing by. Is everything okay? Ready.
Are they ready? Okay, action.
Okay, so we are ready to demonstrate the SlyPod movements. The first two movements that we're going to try and do is, one is the slider movement sideways, and then we have the dolly movement, the push in and the push out. You can operate the SlyPod from the SlyPod itself using the, it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't have too much controls on the SlyPod. An on-off switch, long press the on-off switch and it'll switch on, long press again and it'll switch off. And it has an indicative, power light that indicates whether it's switched on or switched off or it is charging. Well, and also, interestingly, you can change the color of that light. Well, a clever touch. And there is, of course, a plus and a minus touch buttons for you to take the slider forward or backwards. If you want to get additional control on the SlyPod, you have to use an app, a mobile app. And it's called the Moza Master. The advantage with Moza Master is that it allows you to control a whole host of Moza products, including the SlyPod. And of course, it interacts with the SlyPod using the Bluetooth. So switch on the Bluetooth, pick SlyPod, you can move back and forth and select SlyPod. When you see SlyPod, say connect. It'll identify the SlyPod and it'll start connecting. Once it is connected, it will take you into the app. The interface is pretty clean, straightforward. It tells you the battery level first, on your face straight. Now it's 100% because we have powered it from an external power source. The reason is that a full charge in the SlyPod will give you 2 hours. We've been using it extensively for the short, so we ran out of power. Currently, it is using power from an external source. And here we have a remote control, using which, of course, I can control the operation from the mobile device. Then you have a creative video control. Whenever you want to take, let's say, a time-lapse video, a time-lapse stills, you can use the creative video option. And the next one is silent video. Now, this guy is pretty loud. So if you have a live sound being recorded while you do the sliding motion, then of course you need to operate in using the silent mode. So that's an optional control that you have in the app. Once you go into setting, of course, you can change the indicator like I was telling you earlier, and of course, calibration. So before you start using, calibrate it. Basically, extends out completely and retracts completely once to calibrate, itself. Let's see the slider movement, the tracking sideways movement. So here we have 3 movements. One is regular, second is called the gear shift, third is called the acceleration mode. Let's go to this regular one. Regular basically allows you to move from one point to the other point in a set speed. So all you have to do is to slide. If you want to move up, slide, and the camera starts moving. Now the guy has extended it completely outwards and it stops. And if I change, he goes back. He or she, I'm not too sure, so goes back. Now, as you noticed, there is a movement, but it is not really visible, right? 2 reasons. One, the travel is only 11 inches, so you don't really see too much of travel. So to heighten that sense of travel, typically cinematographers use an object in front, basically to create that sense of depth, create a parallax kind of an effect, because the background moves, but it's not too much. But if something is close to the camera, it'll heighten that sense of motion. Okay, so why don't we add some elements at the front and demonstrate this to our viewers? Okay, keep adding. Yeah, keep adding a few more. Okay, so now the objects are placed now. Let's see how this new setup is going to look like. Okay, let me start moving the camera. Nice. right? It's the same thing, same lens, same distance, same camera, same speed movement, but the feel is very different now. You can actually see, you perceive the motion much better. 2 words about sliding movements, okay? If you were to use a conventional slider, the biggest problem that you might face, I'm sure most of them have faced, is in not creating abrupt start and stopping abruptly without any jerks in the beginning. It's called easing in and easing out, okay? In this slider, it's taken care of automatically. If you were to do that, like I said, if you were to do that in a slider, you will require additional motors, which can be very expensive. So take a look at this once more. Notice the smooth start and the smooth stop. Okay, so I'm going to start and I'm going to end. That's it. And it's going to come to a C. There's no abrupt ending. There's no jerky ending or starting. And as you may have noticed by now, you can actually hear the SlyPod moving because it creates a certain hum while it moves, which can be a problem when you are recording audio. In this case, it was a nuisance. So, in such situations, you can use the SlyPod in silent mode, which again is a feature available only in your app. And once you activate that, well, the whole movement will become very silent. So let's move the SlyPod silently. That's right. So it started moving. Maybe it will reduce the speed a little bit, but it'll still move, and it'll move in a very quiet way. So as you can see, it's moving. There's no noise, but it's moving a little slowly. It may not work in that optimum speed. So that's probably one limitation that it has, at least this model that we have. Now this one is a pre-production model. Maybe the final version will have the full speed in silent mode. I'm not too sure. Okay, let's move on. The next option that is available in the app is something called gear shift. Basically, how do you shift a gear in a car? You start slowly and you accelerate and you reach your optimum speed. Then you use gears to slow down and then come to a halt. So you can do something like that in the gear shift mode. So in the gear shift mode, let's see what we can do. You can set the optimum speed, the speed that you want to attain during the travel. Because it is only just 11 inch of travel, probably I'm not too sure whether it is wise to try and reach the maximum speed, but nevertheless let's try. Okay, so I'm going to travel from this side to this side. Let's see. Right, so now it has started moving and it will now pick up the speed, and it's picking up the speed now, as you can see, and before it reaches the full speed, it starts easing slowly and it'll come to a slow stop. Now this kind of movement can be useful in certain situations and you can use it effectively using the app, only available in the app. The second option is called acceleration. So in the acceleration, it just picks up from a speed or from a complete stop to your full speed. It will not slow down before the stop. So let's see that now. Okay, we are in full speed. I'm going to pick up and move. So it's slowly picking up. As you can see, you see those things moving in your foreground, and now it will pick up. It'll pick up and it will pick up to full speed, and it will stop in the maximum speed itself. Right, it won't slow down before stopping. That's it, and stop. Now that stop was nice and smooth. So 3 kinds of operation. One, you can also decide how much you want the SlyPod to travel from, let's say, in small increments. You can really decide that using your app. I think we have pretty much covered the tracking mode, the sliding mode, and in the creative video mode, of course, you can shoot various different ways. So you will actually require a camera which is compatible to SlyPod, because the action will be triggered using the SlyPod hardwire tethered connection onto the camera. So what you can do is you can shoot time lapses. If you add a gimbal onto it, then of course you can also pan, tilt, do all that corrections. You can do a slow inception mode, all that is possible. Since this is not a demonstration of gimbal, well, of course, we're going to limit ourselves only to the SlyPod movements. There are tons of videos available on the internet to see how that is done. Let's move to dolly in and see how silky, buttery smooth those motions are. Okay, now the dolly shot. It's the same situation. I've not moved much, as you can see in the wide camera. We still have those elements in the foreground which will give you a heightened sense of, this dollying in shot. Okay, so let me start doing it. Okay, ready. Ease into that dolly shot, silky smooth dollying in. It's called the push in. Of course, you have only 11 inches of travel, which is sufficient for most purposes, and it comes to a very smooth stop. And once the camera comes to a stop, then dolly back smoothly. It's called the pull out. Right. That's it. So now you saw the push in and the pull out. This movement can be done in the geared mode or the accelerated mode. We saw it once, so you know that it can be done even in this dolly shot. So now we will move out of the studio and see another movement using the SlyPod. Let's get out of the studio and do another shot. What we're going to attempt now, according to me, is a very clever usage of the SlyPod. I have the SlyPod extended out completely, and I have the one of those earlier Moza gimbals, the Moza Air, on it. It's a lightweight gimbal, and I have the Fuji X-T3 with a 1655 mounted on it. What Ali is going to attempt is, I am the model. I'm going to be walking from that distance towards the camera. Ali is going to bring the camera down from almost probably about 15-20 feet and bring it down like a G-bomb, and also follow me. So, interesting shot. You need a lot of patience and strength, you need a lot of nice strong shoulders. I think Ali has it. Let's see how that shot is done. Hello? Okay. So, how does it feel to work with the SlyPod? Let me start with the build quality. Now, this is made of carbon fiber, so I have personally no anxiety about the build quality. If at all, if I have an anxiety, it's about probably a possible play that is developing, in between these two tubes. Highly unlikely, because they are carbon fiber, but that's something which only time will tell. So that's one anxiety that I have. The second one is the distance. So for it travels only about 11 inches. Okay, now that 11 inches, at time can be a little restricting. But also, if you are clever, you can plan your shoots in such a way that you can actually create a nice, interesting movement in that 11 inches of travel. Well, it's primarily aimed at a digital content creator, so I don't think he will ever want to do long dolly shots or tracking shots. So by and large, the 11 can be very comfortable distance. I'm personally very happy with the build quality of this product, barring this anxiety about this possible play, which of course there's no guarantee now at this point because product is just out. The pan tilt head again is made pretty well. The rubber grip is very solid. I don't think it's going to wear out anytime soon. And then of course you have your controls, which again is very well made. I like this touch of wood here. It's a clever touch. It could have been metal, no difference it would have made, but well, that's a clever, interesting, artistic touch, if I may put it that way. The SlyPod weighs just under a kilo, so makes it very easy to transport. It has a nice carry case. Of course, you cannot check it in. You will probably need a little more protection if you want to check it in while traveling in an aircraft, but otherwise it's pretty solid to carry around. So under 1 kilo makes it very comfortable, and most of the sliders, the conventional sliders that are available, will definitely be more heavier, a little more difficult to set up, and if you want any automated movement, of course you will have to spend more on motors, and the silent motors are even more expensive. So that's what my impression is about the product. And in the international market, this is about $500, which is about 35,000 rupees, and it's going to be launched in India very soon, and around that time, I guess, looking at Moza's pricing strategy in India till recently, is that it will be available around that price in India, of course, with an Indian warranty, which is very important. So when you buy a Moza product, make sure that the dealer offers you a warranty too, because it's a clever piece of device and you will need support. And if you need support, well, you have to get it, right? So what else? The only thought that crossed my mind was about the name. I know that they arrived upon this name by adding a monopod and a slider together, which makes it SlyPod, but I don't think anything sly about this pod at all. If at all, if I see something about it, it is smart or clever. I would rather call it a clever pod, not a SlyPod, or a smart pod, but definitely not a SlyPod. What do you think? Yeah? Okay, keep thinking. Bye for now. Before you go away, in case if you want to learn photography online, if you're interested, we have a website. Pixelvillage.com is India's online photography education portal, where we have put together some of the finest photography mentors taking classes just for you. Bye for now.